So hey, how you doing? My name is Darren Glen, and we're going to run through some of the great aspects of the Kicklab XXL Virtual Kickmaker. It's a VSTi synth plugin for Windows presently, and it has a virtual synth section and a sampler section that you combine to make really big, fat, awesome kicks. Designed by myself and Thomas Weber. So let's have a quick look at it and see some of the features and what you can do with it. Basically, it's the first of its kind of a VST synth plugin that contains a synthesizer section to make the kick drums, as well as adding a sampler section at the bottom half that you would normally sort of do separately in separate modules, and then twist and combine them to make one big kick-ass kick in your production. Well, we've combined all of those tricks, including things like phase changes and trim delays, saturations, EQs, filters, all that sort of stuff that you would have to do on several different plugins and across several different channels, all in the one beautiful little elegant interface. So let's just get this thing started. Play a little bit of a kick sound for you here. This is just Darren Glen kick number 1, the first preset that comes up, and you can hear, there we go, let's choose number 3, nice and loud. The first thing you'll notice is there's all these sorts of shape knobs across the top, and volume and pitch. Very handy that you've got a volume for the virtual section for the synth. There's that volume there, and then you also have a volume section down here on the right for the sampler. And right now you can hear there the sampler is doing some wonderful work to the start of our kick there, to the very front. But you've also got these handy mute buttons, so if you want to just work on what you're adding to the sampler section, you can mute the synth section and have a listen to just purely your sample. Let's just have a quick look at that. You can skip through your list of samples if you like with the left and right arrow buttons. You can hit load and load any other synth or sample kick that you want from the screen there. You can reverse your sample if you so desire. You can set key to on so it actually plays it like a real sample. It can play it lower and higher depending on what key you're using, what MIDI note you're using to trigger the particular kick. A very important one is the mono and stereo, which you can select. You also can pitch the sample up and down, as you can hear there. And you also have the trim for the back of the kick, which I can grab here and move up. You can hear it there. So I can just, and I can also use that decay on there, so I can just add that very initial transient, as you can hear there, just sneaking in with the kick synth underneath. We can turn that right up and get a real crunch on it. Very handy. Now we have all sorts of things. If I just mute that for a second, there we go. We've got cutoff and a high pass filter running on the sample, which I tend to like to use. You can hear that going right up and back. Resonance can be handy as well if you want to add a particular type of sound to it. Of course, you can also use low pass, and if I open that up, you'd probably hear a lot more of the bottom end coming through on that sample decay. There you go. great little filters working on this. But at the same time, you want just a little bit of top end coming from the sample, because you generally are going to add it back with your second section at the top here, which is the synth section, which is a lot better at making really deep sub. It's a lot better than often using samples. So my combination is generally to use this top section here to make the sub section of your kick, and the bottom section here, the sample, to add the attack transient. But you can do things back to front if you like. It's a great little click knob here, which adds a little bit of just a little tick on the start of your purely synth sample. You've got impact and punch, which can really add to it. Decay can add some top end, start to build a real monster of a kick here. You've got shape, which you can use to tune and pitch on the left, which you can use to tune your sample to any particular frequency that suits your track. You've also got distortion, of course, and the distortion on this one is particularly good. I don't like to add too much because it tends to make it just go boing, which is fairly standard for most distortions to do. You can also choose between triangle and amp sine wave there. I tend to stick with the sine wave. So we've made ourselves a pretty decent sounding kick just from the synth section. And now we can turn back on our sample. You can also click down here on the sample name, and you can choose any other sample name from your list. So I might choose, let's say, 17, 27, let's go with 15. I can actually hear that that's not quite in time. There's a bit of marching going on. I can actually adjust the front of the sample only to so much of a degree. So I'm using down here the trigger delay knobs, which can line up this and that together, the sample section and the synth section. Now they're both lined up beautifully and they're sounding really tight and thumpy. Give it a bit more volume. There we go. Listen to that. Give it a bit more top end. You've got a level indicator on the left here, which is showing the volume, as you can see there, of the virtual section. And then you've got a level indicator on the far right, which is showing the level of the sample. And the two in the middle are showing the output actual level. So you can look straight at these meters and say, okay, my virtual section is not overloading, my sample section is not overloading. Overall though, I am probably overloading a little bit. That may be due to a little bit too much drive. Could also be due to giving it a little bit too much EQ. When it comes to using the Kicklab, or any kick really, the more headroom the better. So there's plenty of headroom built into this purposely internally. It's making a pretty rockin' kick there, just by sheer coincidence. I think I might save this one. Let's go up to hit a disk. You can save program, and I'll save that as a particular name. I'll call it Darren number 3 mod. There we go. It's putting into my template. Well, we've just skimmed the surface of what the Kicklab XXL is capable of. I'm sure you realize very quickly that it's a very, very powerful instrument indeed, and the combination of the sample and the virtual section makes for one giant kick in your production. So check it out.